More dangerous than the venom of a snake is the poison of anger when it overtakes your heart. Wu in the Book of Elements. Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and in today's installment of the Lore of Ninjago, we shall be discussing that toxic elemental power known as poison. We shall be discussing the element's history, those people, creatures, and objects that have wielded its power, the abilities and powers it grants upon a user, its weaknesses, the colors and symbols associated with it, and much, much more. The history of the elemental power of poison begins, as that of most other elemental powers, with the first Spinjitzu master, who taught this elemental power to an individual who would become known as the first elemental master of poison, who then would pass the elemental power to their children after they died, and in a process that repeated itself for over 100 generations until it came to the previous elemental master of poison. He or she would then pass their power onto the woman who would become known as Tox. At some point before the series started, she unlocked her true potential. During the Tournament of Elements, Tox was invited to participate in Shen's Tournament of Elements and met the other elemental masters on the new Ninjago City piers at midnight, where they were picked up by Klaus with a ferry that took them all to Chen's highly isolated tropical island. Tox would be present at Chen's opening ceremony to his tournament, which was really in secret a scheme to get the elemental powers so that he could turn his loyal cultists into mighty Anakandrai warriors. And she succeeded in getting a Jade Blade, meaning that she survived the first round of the tournament. She would then be there to watch the next 3 fights. She saw Elemental Master of Speed, Griffin, fight against the Elemental Master of Gravity, Gravis. The Elemental Master of Smoke fought Kai, the Elemental Master of Fire. And the Elemental Master of Nature, Bolobo, fighting the Elemental Master of Mind, Neuro. And of course, the climatic battle between Cole and Jay. Tox the next day would watch Skylar fight Jacob in the middle of the night. Afterwards, she was forced to don roller skates and participate in a roller derby held by Chen, and attempted to help her friend, the Elemental Master of Form, Camille, to defeat Lloyd, but failed when the Green Ninja beat her friend and was greatly dejected, and shortly afterwards Tox herself would be defeated by the Elemental Master of Shadows, Shade, and stripped of her powers as she was put to work as a slave in Master Chen's noodle factory. Eventually, Tox and the other elemental masters escaped the factory and confronted Chen's cultists, regaining their powers when Kai destroyed the Staff of Elements. Yet in the end, Master Chen used Skylar, his daughter, to complete his evil transformation spell and transmorgified his cultists into mighty Anakandrai warriors, the strongest to have ever existed. She would help the ninja fight against them during the Battle of the Corridor of Elders in the Second Anakandrai War, but in the end, Garmadon sacrificed himself to banish Chen and his army to the Cursed Realm. During the events of Skybound, Tox, alongside the other elemental masters, was imprisoned by the evil Jin Nadakon in the Jin Blade. Tox and the elemental power of poisons would make their last appearance in the series during the events of Hunted, helping Lloyd and Nia in their resistance movement against Lord Garmadon and his evil biker gang, the Sons of Garmadon. Now that we've covered its history, let us discuss who has wielded this deadly power. First, of course, there was the first Spinjitzu master, who is essentially God in this context. Then there was the first elemental master of poison, and most recently we have Tox, the current elemental master of poison. Additionally, thanks to the Staff of Elements, two additional people held the power of poison, Master Chen and even briefer Kai. Nodicon also theoretically could have had the power of poison using the Jin blades, but we never see him use it. Now, let us cover the single creature to have had the elemental power of poison. The elemental poison dragon is an elemental construct that can be summoned by an elemental master of poison. It is a greenish blue / teal dragon with a rather jello-like head. The two objects to have wielded the elemental power of poison was the Staff of Elements, which itself was constructed out of blue crystal and chronosteel, both elements that could hold at once single elements, but when combined could hold them all. And the Jin Blade could also theoretically tap into the elemental power of poison, especially once Nodicon absorbed her soul. Now that we have covered the objects and creatures, let us cover the powers and abilities that the elemental power of poison bestows upon a user. The first and most obvious power that a user gets is toxikinesis, with which the user is able to manipulate and generate poison, usually in the form of clouds of poisonous gas. With toxic breath, the user is able to breathe a cloud of poisonous gas that seemingly can knock out people, much like what happened to Kai. A more passive ability is that of their toxic / poison / venom immunity, with which, if a user is concentrating, they are virtually immune to any kind of toxin, poison, or venom, including the tiger's widow venom, which, if you don't know, is from a gigantic spider whose venom is so toxic that not only can it kill a normal person, it can even paralyze the supernatural jinn. Speaking of, the poison generated by an elemental master of poison is so toxic that it can even harm a jinn, like that of the tiger widow venom I mentioned earlier. In terms of colors, the element of poison is associated with the colors bright green, teal, and to a lesser extent yellow. Poison's symbol is that of an upside-down biohazard sign, with 4 daggers protruding from it in a diagonal manner. It actually vaguely resembles a skull and crossbones, which is meant to symbolize the relationship between poison and death. In terms of weaknesses, poison requires the target to actually, well, be alive and breathing, meaning that an undead entity like that of a skulkin or a ghost would be largely unaffected by a poison. Also, it's not much of a physical element, meaning that while it can hit you, it's not capable of really physically pushing you back in much the same way that, say, earth or water can. They also tend, though this isn't 100% confirmed, to give the user a more toxic attitude, as when Tox loses her elemental powers, she starts acting a lot nicer to the ninja, though it is uncertain if this is actually a side effect of the element or merely the situations around this. So, what can we learn from the elemental power of poison? Well, we learn the dangers of a toxic mindset and how it can prevent us from viewing the truth of the matter and hold us back in our real life from achieving our dreams and important goals. I would advise us all to try and fight against the toxic influences in our lives. I am Sensei the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Lore of Ninjago.